Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Recently, there have been two high-profile retirements of journalists in our area. A week ago, Barbara Sierra said farewell to her viewers on News 3, and so did Nicole Livas, now former anchor at 13 News Now. But there's another retirement that's happened recently that you may not be aware of. Journalist Leonard Colvin. Nope, he's not on TV, but a print journalist in the black press. A print journalist who for the past 36 years has covered the black community of Hampton Roads. Up next on Another View, meet Leonard Colvin with the New Journaling Guide, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamlee. Okay, let me just start off by saying I know I sound like a frog, but my throat started with scratchiness a week ago today, and now it has settled in my head, but it's not COVID, and I feel much better than I sound. So please bear with me, but our guest today is so entertaining that you won't even worry about my voice. So there you go. So there are many of you in our listening audience who are intimately aware of the New Journaling Guide. Your parents, your grandparents, probably your great-grandparents subscribe to the weekly newspaper that covers the black community. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the New Journaling Guide is headquartered in Norfolk and is the third oldest black newspaper in the country. Today, I'm so excited to have a conversation with a mainstay of the paper, journalist Leonard Colvin, who I call the hardest working man in print journalism. Hey, Leonard, how are you?
Good afternoon, Barbara. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to have you here because you've been a long-time listener of Another View, and we appreciate the coverage, that you've given us.
Yes.
But also, I think that we may stir a couple of ideas every now and then, maybe.
Yes. I'd hope so.
So if someone walked up to you and said, they're from Mars, and they said, "Who is Leonard Colvin?" What would you say?
Oh, goodness. I would say that I'm an alien just like you because I'm from Arkansas and I came to Virginia and discovered a rich career and a fascinating history of a people that I truly respect because Virginia I knew nothing about Virginia before the Navy exported me here in 1987. And I knew nothing about Hampton University, knew nothing about Norfolk State University, knew nothing about Norfolk or about the rich historic life of the people in this area. Mm-hmm. I knew Arkansas had a history. With Daisy Bates and all those people. But Virginia is I found to be a very fascinating place to be a journalist.
Well, okay, so let's go back for a little bit because when you were in high school, did you write for the high school paper?
No, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the high school paper. I did write letters to the editor of my little town in Stuttgart, Arkansas. Apparently, you know where Stuttgart, Germany is?
Yes.
That's where the BMW is. Apparently, a franchise. They created a franchise in Arkansas, Stuttgart.
Oh.
So, and you asked me what inspired me to be a journalist.
Sure.
It would be Richard Nixon and Martin Luther King Jr. And I forgot the other person, but those three elements really inspired me to be a journalist because at that time, Richard Nixon created the EPA.
Okay.
And I'm watching Walter Cronkite. They're talking about putting filters on factories and such. And in my little small town of Stuttgart, Arkansas, it was called the rice and duck capital of the world because it was a huge farming community around this little small town of 10,000 people. And every harvest, they would bring the rice to the mills to dump off to be polished. Now, original rice is brown, but when they finish polishing it and everything, they throw off the dust. And the dust came into the black community called Rock Island. Okay, it was just like snow in the latter part of October, the harvest season.
Environmental justice, when environmental justice wasn't a thing.
No, environmental justice and a lot of things in that city relative to African Americans was not the thing. And I got to thinking about the EPA and the filters that the EPA was trying to get the factories to put on and keep releasing all the dust. Maybe that could do it in Stuttgart. So I bought a typewriter and I wrote a letter to the editor. And I didn't know if it was going to be printed or not, but I suggested that if the city, Rice and Foods or the various rice mills in the area, which were huge, because if you go into that town at night, you thought you were going into this huge urban center, but no, these were just huge rice mill silos. Silos. Where so I said, if they can't stop dumping all this dust on us during harvest, then black people should boycott buying rice.
Oh.
Okay. Martin Luther King. Okay. So I'm outdoors.
How old were you when you wrote this letter?
Oh, about 13.
Okay.
So because everybody in my family were readers, and I read newspapers. My mother used to work for a restaurant. She would get the newspapers that white people would throw away, and I would read
the papers.
Read the newspapers, and reading Jack Anderson and all those people, you know. So one day I'm out playing in the front yard with my dog, and my mother came to the door and looked out, and I had never seen. My mother was a very brave and strong woman, but I had never seen that look on her face. It was a look of fright or, what the hell did you do? No, the mayor wants to talk to you. So he said, hello, mayor. And he was very apologetic. Leonard, I read your letter, and we're very sorry about what's going on in Rock Island, and we're going to try to do our best. Are you hearing? And yes, sir, I am. Because I'm standing there, my mother's looking at and we're going to try to do our best to clean that situation up. I said, oh, okay, thank you, Mayor. That's all I said. And I went and read, and I said, they didn't cut it or anything. And my mother said, what's wrong? I said, nothing. Did you read I asked her, did you read the letter? She read it. She said, oh, Lord.
So that was that got you started.
Yeah, what your daddy going to say? Daddy didn't say anything. He came home and he said, I heard about you. I said, okay. Because he worked at the rice mill too. He said, okay. So after that, I said, oh, dang.
That's how
it started.
So you went to college?
I went to college.
At the University of Arkansas?
No, I started off in a place called Henderson State University in 1976, white school. And I remember the 30 people in that class. And I think I am the last working member of that class. Everybody is retired, dead, or whatever. But it was a white school, and that was probably the largest black class they'd ever had. And that school was going through the pangs of integration. But I enjoyed it because as I worked with the guide, I worked with that with the Oracle at the time, and I would write 4 or 5 stories, and I had a radio show because they gave you the full view of what a broadcaster, what a journalist can be, and I just took advantage of it. Of course, it was a 1 watt radio station.
Wow!
And our biggest audience was a dormitory, Newberry Hall. So I played records for all my friends and everything, and enjoyed that. But I got a good experience. But I was not academically ready. So I told Daddy I'm coming home. And I came home and I spent, I think, the fall of 1978 sitting there watching Dallas Cowboy football and saying, what am I going to do next? and Miss Barbara Ellis, who was probably one of the few black people in that area, had a college degree. She said, you should go to my alma mater and go to UAPB, University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And I remember showing up with my clothes in this trunk and going to registration, and the woman looked at my grades. She said, what have you been doing the last 2 years? She said, well, I don't know. She said, well, we'll help you. And I took off. And that school didn't have a journalism program. It was building a journalism program. Mm-hmm. What little communications education they gave people was under the speech and dramatic arts department. So my degree is actually in speech and dramatic arts. So okay. I would take whatever classes they had in writing and technical writing and whatever, English literature, and of course, I know everything about poetry and Shakespeare and all that good stuff.
The fundamentals of writing.
And
yes.
At night, I would go to the theater building and build sets, assistant director, write press releases for programs, and help and been played in a few plays.
So it went during your college career. Then how did you get from there to the Navy?
Oh well, first of all, I must admit I was editor of the campus newspaper also. I got on that.
You did get on that.
Yes, I forgot about that. The Arkansas, yes, which was an interesting experience. And got from there, I went to the Pine Bluff Commercial. And that's where I met Mr. Marion Baker, I think was the last boyfriend of Madam C.J. Walker's very privileged daughter. Okay. And for years, he had been trying to get the Pine Bluff Commercial to do a story on him. Uh-huh. Okay. And they refused for various reasons. So I said, I'll take it on. So when I drove up in the car, because I taught myself how to drive, actually, yes, in Pine Bluff, because I didn't know how to drive. And I lied. When I applied for the job, I told them, oh, yeah, I can drive. But I had to teach myself. That's another story within itself.
Okay, we only got an hour. So
but I pulled up, and he said, oh, they finally sent a Negro reporter out to talk to me. So he had this big trunk of stuff that he had absconded with when he left Madam C.J. Walker's daughter. He was a scoundrel. I don't know how he got to Arkansas, but that was an interesting story. But I became the reporter for a whole host. I was a regional reporter because I was going all over the place. And I remember one night going to Sheridan, Arkansas, and my editor told me, it's an all-white town. You're very racist. Be very careful. I know you are going there at night. So I remember driving up and entering City Hall, and the guy at the door said, Otis, y'all supposed to go around the back to clean up. Yeah. I said, I'm not Otis. I'm learning from the Pine Bluff Commercial. Oh, I'm sorry, whatever. But it was dull work, just covering City Hall. They were buying backhoes and setting
politics.
Yeah, politics
small
and whatever.
Town politics. Yeah.
But I discovered also down in southeast Arkansas some of the most poverty-stricken areas. It shocked me. My little city was impoverished, but southeast Arkansas, around southwest Arkansas, I must say, oh my God, some of them. And I wrote about that stuff. It was very interesting.
So all the time that you're writing at this point in your career, it's for mainstream media.
Mainstream media. Okay. But they knew that I had an interest in, well, not necessarily I had the interest. They knew that I was probably a black reporter, and I probably would have a rapport with the black community. And I met a lot of the black people who were movers and shakers in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Yeah.
And that's how I got triggered into black history, really, because they didn't teach it really in my high school.
So you went into the Navy also.
I went into the Navy
as a journalist, right?
I went to the Navy because of the Reagan recession, because I was offered the job for the Pine Bluff Commercial a semester before I was to graduate. They said, well, come take the job now. You could always go back and get your degree. So I said, okay, I'll take the job. Okay. I took the job. I had no degree. So I worked a couple of years there. And when the Reagan recession hit, I got tired of sleeping on my sister's couch, and I went into the Navy, which I never thought I would go into the military. And I had the chance to go to Europe, to Sigonella, Italy, But this young black man who wanted to get as far away from his baby mamas as possible said, well, I'll switch orders with you. So I landed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba.
So you went to Cuba.
I went to this air station in Cuba. And when ships left Norfolk out of the yard, they would go to Cuba for refresher training. And that air squadron provided teaching all the ships how to fight against aircraft. These old A4 aircraft, old, 1960s aircraft. But the Navy still used them to train all of the tactical defense units on carriers and other ships how to defend themselves. It was a fascinating experience being in Cuba, yes. And because the CIA would come through, because I was in the operations department of the squadron. So the CIA would come through and they needed somebody to show them around. So they would pick you. I had to drive them around. And it's a fascinating world that the Navy and the CIA had said, we will cooperate with you, but we have to keep an eye on you. So they gave me the opportunity to drive these people around to their various checkpoints and take them to the gate at night because we couldn't go into Cuba. But these CIA people would come and they would go do their thing at night. And I had to go pick them up
come back
in the morning.
Wow.
But there's a few cases where they did not come back, and they would say,
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking with Leonard Colvin of the New Journaling Guide. He's newly retired and finding out about his fascinating history of covering the Black community in Hampton Roads and beyond. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Give us a call. Are you a reader of the New Journaling Guide? Have you read Leonard's stuff? Let's talk to him. Give us a call when you get a chance. So, Leonard, when you how did you come to the New Journaling Guide?
Well, when I left Cuba, I came to Norfolk on a ship very briefly. I would have probably probably would have signed up again, but no, I couldn't.
You decided you
No,
were
I
done.
had to get off that ship. So when I got off, and I already had an apartment in Ocean View, and I was sitting around watching soap operas and growing a beard and drinking beer I said, I got to do something. So I hanging out in downtown Norfolk, I met my dear friend Robert Brown, which, we are mutual friends.
Yeah.
And he said, well, if you're a journalist, if you're interested in writing, we got the Journaling Guide. That's our Black newspaper in this city. So I tried to call the Guide and get an appointment, and I just couldn't get a firm date. So I kept calling, and this lady named Miss Wilkins, Janet Wilkins, who was the receptionist at the Guide at the time. Well, Miss Brenda Andrews, who is now the current chair and owner of the Guide. Yeah. She said, well, she is so busy. So I said to myself, now, I'm going to have to do this. So I just went in one day, put on my whatever little dress clothes I had, and I was sitting in the foyer. And I came up and I said, I'm Leonard. I had a 10 a.m. appointment with Miss Brenda Andrews. I had no appointment, but this is what I had to do. She said, well, go over there and sit up. She'll be in here in a few minutes. She's busy, So Miss Andrews came in, and Miss Andrews, that young man over there, he has a 10 o'clock appointment. Okay, give me a chance, and I'll be with you in a few minutes. And we went and talked, and the rest is history. I didn't tell her about that. I think I first revealed that about 7 years ago. She said, oh, that's how you got it.
That's how you got it. But Leonard, you're the only reporter.
I was
when you were there. You were the only reporter,
when
right?
I got there, there was one young lady in the newsroom called Shamiko. I forgot her last name, but she was the only one there because everybody had left. And Miss Andrews was in control at that time, thank goodness.
So the paper was undergoing
bankruptcy and all of that. We had to go through all that. Dr. Reed owned the place, Dr. Milton Reed.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, my goodness. And in the first week, I didn't know what to do because I'm used to getting assignments from an editor. So I just started doing stuff on my own and working with Miss Andrews and talking to her. And in the way because she was so busy trying to pull together what she had found, what had been put in her lap.
Sure.
So since then, everything. So it worked out.
So what kind of stories do you cover?
I cover everything.
Everything.
I cover. If you look at my work, economics, politics, personal, whatever.
The whole
gamut. And I did that in college.
So, but when you were here in Hampton Roads, you had just gotten out of the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't know a lot of people. Was it hard for you to get your foot in the door to get the story?
No, because people. No, it wasn't because I figured that.
Because I'm all that.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. There was people who really wanted to connect with the journaling guide, people like Joe Rose or Herbert Collins. Well, I heard y'all ain't. See, the thing was, y'all ain't closed yet. I know we're still here. We were. It was always. There were people always worried. We were worried. Oh, is the guide still open? Yes. So people came to us after about 6 or 7 months after they figured that, oh well, somebody's there doing something, writing. People started coming to us, and that's how we built our trust, our connection.
Sure.
Because I didn't know what I was doing, but getting in contact with people and talking to people and building that network of support and getting that trust. And Miss Andrews was always doing her PR thing, her administrative thing. She always worked, to keep the place viable. So we were... She and I and the other people who worked in the shop, we just kept things going.
So, Leonard, what do you say to people who say, well, why do you have to have a black press? Why? I mean, you got the newspaper. Why can't the newspaper just be the newspaper?
Black folks have to own their own voice, and black people have to own something other than dysfunction.
Absolutely.
In our community. We always have to have our voice. That's why when over the years, I discovered in competing against the Virginian pilot when it was in all its glory, they would write their story, and then I would write my story. Our story was always about what black people thought how things were going, how Church Street was going. Joe Rose, people will remember Joe Rose, the rape of Church Street. Miss Andrews gave Joe Rose a voice, the rape of Church Street. I thought it was, and when I went down to Church Street finally, I said, what the hell are they waiting on? They should just bomb the place and let it go. But I didn't know the history of Church Street, how that was one of the black Wall Streets. They talk about the Wall Street in Tulsa. Church Street was Norfolk's
Black
Wall Street.
Yeah.
And then they had the Wall Street in Portsmouth and Newport News, because black people wanted to attain and secure some economic future and security for themselves.
So at the same time that you were chronicling history as it was happening, you were also
it was
going
timely.
back and bringing the history forward.
That history came forth with, you had to write for the day.
Right.
But you discovered there's a history to this, because I would write a story and just concentrate on what's going on today. Somebody would call me and say, well, so-and-so and so-and-so happened, and but the history of Church Street. I wrote about Church Street, and somebody called and said, well, apparently you don't know anything about Church Street, do you? I said, and that was Joe Rose. So he started informing me about Church Street, about the history of Church Street. How the Jewish community left Church Street because Norfolk refused to fix it up. So they said, well, we'll go and take over Granby Street, and you see what happened there. What was left to the black people. So they took it and they flourished with it. That's the history of Church Street. Now we see what exists now is ever evolving. That whole area, that St. Paul's area, has been rehabilitated, redeveloped. How many times?
Yeah.
Since I've been here.
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Sean joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Sean. You're on the air.
Yes, I'm calling to congratulate Leonard. I worked at the Guide with Leonard the last 26 years.
Oh, I know Sean quite well.
Leonard is, let me just do the math for you, because you said hardest working. So if we do 2 to 4 articles a week, for 50 weeks a year times 37 years, That is 7,400 articles that Leonard probably is responsible for writing.
Wow.
So I have the similar nickname to Leonard. It's got a little sort of a twist to it because I'm the hardest working white man in black newspapers
Okay.
for the last 26 years. So I'm approaching 450 published articles. I'm only 6,800 behind Leonard.
And it might be even a lot of those with not my name on it too.
When I get to 600, I'll only be that many years behind him. And I only have a couple other things to say. Ms. Andrews is the 2019 National Black Newspaper Publisher of the Year nationally.
She should be the publisher every year.
And she of all the 200 black newspapers, she is the one who has kept the New Journal Guide afloat. Ms. Andrews has provided a place for me as a white man to come in there and write defending black America from a Quaker, inclusive, everyone is equal perspective.
Wow.
And it's all under the masthead of our masthead, which says publishing since 1900 so that no good cause shall lack a champion and evil shall not thrive unopposed. And the last thing I want to say, two things. Leonard and I are both Cowboy fans.
Yeah.
and we can hire somebody to replace Leonard, but we will never fill his shoes.
Oh, Sean, thank you so much for the call.
Leonard, I love you, brother.
Oh,
you too,
that
my
is
brother.
so nice. You know, doesn't that make you feel great?
Oh yeah. Well, I've known Sean for a long time. He's
If you're just joining up, we're up close and personal with journalist Leonard Colvin, recently retired after 37 years from the New Journal and Guide newspaper. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Roy joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Roy. You're on the air.
Oh, thank you so much. And,
Roy Perry.
I get choked up when I think about Leonard and Brenda because their work in our community that impacts not only our community, but both national and international. And the reason I say this is Leonard made it a duty to give aid to the voiceless, the marginalized. Many of us rejected by the mainstream white press, subjected to media bias, and continued to this day by the mainstream white press, including many African Americans who are part of that mainstream white press core. So, Leonard, I want to say thank you for your service. Man, what a champion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Roy, for that
If
call.
there's anybody that should have been a lawyer, it's Roy Perry Bay. Because if you look at Herbert Collins versus the city of Norfolk, and recently Holloway versus the city of Virginia Beach, which changed their political system, Roy helped make that happen. Roy, I thank you.
Wow, that's a tribute. So how do you find your stories?
Sitting around listening to NPR and people, national stories. Like recently, the story about Section 2, the idea that no one can challenge any civil rights violations if they're not the Department of Justice. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's probably the silliest lower court opinion that I've ever heard, considering Butts and the city of, Collins versus Norfolk. And, most of the cases that challenged voting rights violations were from individuals and peoples. So that's interesting in case. But just I have a little network of people who feed me information. I'm keeping my nose, reading 4 or 5 different newspapers, reading, oh my goodness, just talking to people and just keeping a view of what's going on. A lot of people didn't see me out in public a lot of times, but I was snooping around, always keeping an eye on what was going on.
What was happening?
Yeah, that was the most scariest thing about the Journaling Guide, because we always came out with information and stories that nobody else had.
Yeah. I remember doing some research for a project and looking at the coverage of the first day of the Norfolk 17 and the difference between the way the Journaling Guide covered it versus the way the Virginian Pilot covered it was jaw-dropping. I mean, because the Pilot presented it as this was a great day. Things went very smoothly. The New Journaling Guide, you guys talked to the people who had to walk through those halls, and you got that story of what was happening to them.
Well, the Journaling Guide and the Black Press period was covering stories about African Americans trying to make initially separate but equal a reality. Separate but equal was not the reality.
Right.
If a lot of people say if they had made separate but equal a reality, you wouldn't be bothered with us. You wouldn't be bothered with the Little Rock situation, or because we would have schools equal to white people. But throughout leading up to the Norfolk 17 and Little Rock and whatever, the Black Press covered the Brown decision. Even the stories before the Brown decision, even covering how the schools were in Princess Anne County and Norfolk. The Guide did an extraordinary series of how dilapidated the public schools were in this area, especially in Princess Anne County. And always kept up with what was going on with with the teacher pay inequality, the buildings. Always saluted the black educators. Always talked about what was going on in the schools every week. Keeping the names of the teachers that made a difference, and every teacher made a difference. We covered that up until that point, so it was just a momentum up to that point when the Norfolk 17 stepped into those schools. The Virginia Pilot could care less. They may have covered the fact that the Brown decision came forth, but up until that time, it was probably scant. Because
it didn't affect that community as much as it did the black community.
And the editor of the Pilot won a Pulitzer, a great award for that, but they forgot about all of the writing that the Journaling Guide did on that subject. They forgot about what P.B. Young and his sons did.
How are you? Do you say, and you personally, and then in general, how is the black press accepted by mainstream press?
It's always I don't know how to answer that question. I know we've always been that stepchild, but we always had to give voice to who we were. The Ebonies, the Journaling Guides, the Pittsburgh Couriers. We always had to tell our voice. I don't think a lot.
Or do you even see yourself in competition?
I see them as a source sometimes, but in competition, no, because I wanted to tell our voice. I read their stories. Oh, I could do better than that. Yeah. I can tell how black people. I can write about what black people think about this. And I said that was always the scary part about the black press, because they never knew what we were going to come forth with the truth. It was always what the Pilot said. But what do black people really think about? Black people had the first time to think about what they thought about the at-large system of voting in Norfolk with Herbert Collins and Paul Riddick and all those people and Roy Perry pushing for a change. For the first time, they had a voice to say what was going on. The situation with the Christopher Newport University situation. I wrote that little story. I thought it was a very small story.
That WHRO is
they're
covering
going to blow it up.
Yeah.
I thought, but considering that the truth was not told, they was not told about the fact that at a certain point, the first black faculty members of Christopher Newport University, they secretly engaged with the black people in Shoe Lane. I think that's what it's called. They secretly went and told those black people what the school was doing. And nobody ever knew that part of the story. It's a lot of things that the black press has always revealed. Like for instance, D-Day. They think there were no black people fighting in Normandy or on those beaches. Yes, black people were there. They had a very intricate part. They weren't fighting like the white soldiers were, but those balloons that went up to keep the German pilots from coming in, they operated those. They also had assisted in the medical care of those people. Oh, my goodness.
So it's about telling the full story.
It's about telling the full circle of what happened.
Now, I know you're a member of Hampton Roads Black Media Professionals and NABJ.
Yes.
And
Lisa said, Lisa will say, well, where you been? But I've been busy doing other things. I'm sorry, Lisa.
But are you accepted by Roy mentioned those black folks, those of us who work in mainstream media, but are still trying to tell the full story. Are they colleagues of yours? In other words,
I would no. Some of the old folks like you and Barbara Sierra,
old folks.
Well,
excuse
not
me,
old folks, but some of the senior people,
yes,
whom I came up with, because Barbara was, very inspiring to me. And John Roberts and all the other people. Yes, I'm sorry about old folks, but the senior people.
I'm teasing you.
Yeah.
We got it.
Not the young ones. No, I sort of disengaged, but because I'm not as social as I used to be. I have to admit, not as engaged as I used to be. I probably have a lot to say to young journalists nowadays, and I hope to do that now that I'm retired or whatever. But
because your mentorship is going to be important.
Yes, but to say to Miss Livas and you and all the others, you guys are inspirational too, because y'all came through a whole lot.
True that.
You came through a whole lot.
True that.
Especially Miss Livas.
Yeah, very much.
She was the first one.
Yeah, Becky Livas.
And Becky Livas. She was the first one that came through, and nobody even thought about. People have honored what she's done, but what you've done and Don Roberts has done, all the others,
757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Do you have a subscription to the New Journaling Guide, and do you read it on a weekly basis? We'd love to hear from you. Hey, let's talk to the publisher of the New Journaling Guide, Brenda Andrews. Hi, Brenda. You're on the air.
Good morning. Good morning. First thing I want to say is, Leonard, cut that stuff about the old people.
Thank you, Brenda.
I know somebody's going to shoot my porch light out tonight.
I had a wonderful conversation when he shared with me that he felt he needed some time while he still had some brain cells to do some things apart from the journaling guide. And even though I and everyone here misses, we all miss Leonard. We have retired his title. There will not be another chief reporter as long as I am the owner of this publication.
Oh, wow.
He is reporter emeritus, and that is the title that belongs to him. Leonard is and will go down in the history of the Black press as one of our premier persons, journalists, not only because he can write well, but also because he understands who we are in the Black press. And we will be observing 200 years in the year 2027 of the first Black newspaper that was published in 1827. And at that, two Black men. And think about it, Barbara. 1827, most of the people of African descent in the United States were enslaved and forbidden by law to read or write.
Wow.
Yet, the first Black newspaper, the oldest Black business in America, was founded with the motto, "For too long, others have spoken for us. Now it is time we speak for ourselves." And the Black press is not a moment. It is a movement. It is a 200-year-old movement that says that Black people not only have the right but deserve every respect in telling our own story. And Leonard Colvin knows how to do that. I have the utmost respect. Leonard and I never had an official meeting. We met as we walked and passed by each other in the hallway. We just clicked for 37 years. Leonard, I would not be the publisher I am without the support and the encouragement and the integrity that Leonard Colvin has brought and left here at the Journaling Guide. And we love Leonard here. I love Leonard. And we miss you, Leonard, but look, I will be behind you.
Well, Missy, I must say that you have been definitely the foundation of that paper. I don't think it would not exist if it wasn't for you. I know many times you went through that hallway with your hair on fire, but you knew what you were doing the whole time. And you were my inspiration.
So, Brenda, let me ask you while I have you on the line, because I want to ask Leonard this question too. As you look at the future of the Black press, is the Black press here to stay forever?
I think the Black press will always have a place in America and the world as long as there are issues, concerns that are germane to the African American community and the need to tell our own story. And I can't imagine that there would ever be a time that there would not be a need. Now, what does change is the way that news is delivered,
Sure.
and the way that we get that message out. And of course, print, which we're print heavy, but we're also moving in the digital and the electronic direction, as well as videos and that sort of thing, because we understand that each generation has its own way of receiving information.
Yeah.
But there's always a need for the information.
Well, I receive mine digitally, and I thank you so much for the work that you all are doing, and thank you for calling in, Brenda. We appreciate it.
Robert.
To add to that, we have the print versions of the Black press, but also we have to be concerned about what is being said via the written Black press and internet and whatever, because there are a lot of people out there who could utilize the voice of the Black press apparatus to misinform, like Miss Candace Owens and others. We must always be mindful of the people who will deceive, because it's easy to deceive a population, as we have discovered with Mr. Donald Trump, because it's such a broad array of means of communicating.
Yeah.
And Black people have to, they can't depend on one means of communication.
They have to use all of it.
They have to use all of them.
Discern and use it in a discerning way.
And be able to distinguish that which is factual versus that which is not.
So we got a question from on our Facebook page from Kevin. He said that you mentioned former Councilman Herbert Collins and bringing down the at-large system. What role do you feel the New Journaling Guide played in changing things to award system? And what other stories do you feel the paper has played in bringing change?
Educating people about what the award system was versus the at-large system. Now
which is kind of what's going on in Virginia Beach now, right?
If you look at the way voting systems are set up, the at-large system, if there are three seats open on a council, and as you know, the people who get the three highest number of votes win a seat on there. But if the Black population is small, or if the Black population is reasonably large, but the voter turnout is bad, then Black people will not be able to get anybody on council, as we discovered in Norfolk. It works well in Portsmouth because Portsmouth is the largest majority Black city in Hampton Roads. Okay. There's no problem there. But like in a city like Norfolk is a majority minority city. They hate to admit it, but yes, it is. Okay. But with a ward system, you are guaranteed at least some pockets of the city. Somebody, at least get 3 seats. Virginia Beach, they have 4 black people. They've never had that before. Right. Because we educated people about the importance of changing that system and educating white people also who didn't know how the system was rigged to keep them from getting who they wanted. And back then, Collins and all of them came to the guide and they started educating me about it. I mean, I have stacked high folders of legal briefs. Wow. I thought I needed to be a lawyer to read through all that stuff and understand what was going on. And once I educated myself, that sort of fired me up as to write more and more about the dynamics of representation on council. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people say, well, they got a black mayor and they got just many people on council. It still doesn't mean anything. That's a whole new dimension of how we should try to make a black representation accountable as well.
Well, because that's supposed. I'm stunned a little bit to hear you say that, but I understand what you're saying in the sense that there should never be a thought that just because of the color of your skin that things are going to go a certain way.
Well, one point that was made to me some time ago. Going back to Paul Riddick, he mentioned during a crucial election, he won that election. He said, well, I only got 39 votes from, or 89 votes from Tidewater Park. And he said, well, I don't know how can we get black people out to vote? Now, I didn't tell him that, but I'm thinking to myself, maybe you have not given these people any reason to vote. Because if you take all of these especially public housing communities in Norfolk, all the eligible people who could vote, if they voted in strong numbers, the city of Norfolk wouldn't do half the stuff to them that is happening to them. But you must give people a reason to vote. I'm still getting beaten by the cops. I still have no job. My housing situation is still unsecure because I can't find a job where I can get out of public housing because public housing was always transitional. Yeah. I'm still under the gun, but you still want me to vote for you, but you're not helping me.
But you're not helping me understand how you can make a change.
Yeah, you don't even talk to me unless you wanted to come and knock on my door to vote for you.
Let's see. Lynn from Chesapeake wants to know, what is a story you haven't mentioned that touched you personally?
That have not mentioned? About I think it's really not really personally, but the plight economically of many black men in this city. I'm a black man. I'm so lucky to be educated and have the drive and the friends and people who support me. But and I have written stories on. But if you walk, I walk through Norfolk a lot, and I see a lot of black men who are so deprived of so many things. And people ask, when you're driving through cities with people who don't know, these people don't want to work. They're this and that. I said, not necessarily, because a lot of them have, from 5th grade, somehow or another been engaged in the criminal justice system, and their whole future has been destroyed. And it's done deliberately. Because black men have always been a threat, always been, and then walking through the city and you see these little boys sagging and grown. It's enough to see young boys sagging.
And then you see grown men.
And you see grown men say, and a white man is driving through a city and see this with his son. He said, "Well, son, that's somebody you will never have to compete with. You will never have to compete with him because he's already defeated himself."
And you've done stories on this. Yes,
I have done stories. I don't think I have. I don't think I've really touched that story. I really don't think I have touched that particular area of urban black life like I want to. But that is one thing I've always observed. And people say, well, why do you have to drag that out, even think about doing it? But because it needs to be done. Now, the white press has done it, and other black journalists has done it. I haven't had a chance to do it yet. But that's probably one of the most agonizing and the most conscious perking things I have encountered, seeing how black men themselves disenfranchise themselves and how the system has disenfranchised themselves.
Let's see. Do we have time to get one more call in? I think we got 3 minutes. Let's go to Elena in Norfolk. Elena, I need you to be quick, but go ahead. You're on the air.
Thank you. Excellent program. Treasures hidden in plain sight. It is so important to recognize these gems, and I am so grateful that you are doing this. I would like to offer that people would consider taking subscriptions as gifts. Oh. This is a gift-giving season, but throughout the year, instead of another gadget and another ugly sweater, consider and giving people subscriptions to this journal, to this newspaper.
Okay, thank you, Elena. I really appreciate the call so very, very much. We got about 3 minutes left, Leonard. Some final thoughts. Oh, first of all, Tanya from Norfolk says, thanks for having Leonard on today. I'll follow the New Journaling Guide and have a subscription. They're such an important part of our community. So what do you want to say to folks as we start to wrap things up?
Well,
first of all, are you going to write a book?
Yeah, I have thought about it, and and just the last couple of weeks, I really have thought about that. And looking back, the last couple of nights, sleepless nights, sitting there watching reruns of Golden Girls and Downton Abbey, putting a timeline in my head as to all of the funny and ironic and interesting stuff that I've done in life. I may seem dull, but looking back, oh my goodness. My life has been very interesting.
Leonard, I never thought of you as a dull person.
Well, no, I have to be deliberately dull. There are certain people in you will find in your life they have to be deliberately dull. Otherwise, really have to be.
So, if you write the book, will it be more about your travails as a journalist, or would it be more about your personal life?
Personal life and being a journalist. Some of the things I've saw especially when I was young, some of the cultural things I still carry with me. So a lot of things I say that people don't understand, but I'm endearing them from my past. Some of the language and food and ideas. And especially about my father and my mother and my whole neighborhood of Rock Island. Wow. And it was every house had a house full of children, at least 9. All the men were the same. Everybody cared about one. It was a fascinating time in my life.
Well, I can't wait to read that, and we'll have to have you back when you write that book.
Oh, I hope, yes.
Leonard Colvin, he is newly retired from the New Journaling Guide.
Well, I say semi-retired. I still do a few things. People still calling and asking me to do things.
Asking you to do some stories anyway. Yeah. See, it wasn't so bad now, was it?
No.
Now, we hope you enjoyed learning about Leonard Colvin and the Black Press. And if you did, please share this show with a friend. Just go to anotherviewradio.org and download the podcast. Check out shows that you may have missed while you're on our website. And then also sign up for our EV newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, it's the last roundtable of 2023. And we're going to be paying a very special tribute to one of our roundtable members. So you really want to tune in and check that out. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Mask up when you're in crowded places, folks. There are lots of germs out there. Trust me, you can hear it in my voice. Stay safe, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever. Whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.